What's going on, YouTube? This is your melanated warrior, Haywood Haynes, and this is another installment of Facts Over Feelings. Leave your feelings at the door so we can get to the facts. And I think that we're starting to see political theater at its height, right? You know, we see what's going on with the governor of Mississippi, the governor of Texas, easing up restrictions. And, I'm not here to argue whether they're right or wrong, but the two things that kind of jump out at me immediately. One is that we see that, where the power line, right? We were right in our attack that we showed people like, look, if you were to play the game, the power is saturated at the local and the state level. And you see the governors, just kind of, pumping their chest out right now and telling the president what they won't do. And a lot of people are still narrating and articulating it as top-down politics, right? They keep saying, oh, well, yeah, they, going against what Biden wanting them to do. They sitting up there, they deviating from the course. No, this is how everything was set up. The Bill of Rights was set up for limited government. Your state has sovereignty. The governor, they always had that power, always had that type of power. So, like we said before, so many people think that they know politics. They have to just understand that, look, if you follow these blancos, they're going to be, emotional, because they have to understand that this is how politics work. It doesn't work from the top down. What you're asking for is what the Bill of Rights was trying to prevent, was a monarchy. When what they're trying to do is create a king. And that's what the balance of powers is really truly all about, so that could be averted. But anyways, I digress. And then, like we said, the irony being too as well, that a year ago people were protesting against this sort of thing, and now they've bought into it, hook, line, and sinker, and now they think that this is, like I said before, a viable option in terms of mitigating the outbreak. But one of the things also that I've seen too, from all of this chaos, that I got to pick out and we got to attack and we got to put it front and center, is this conflict or this frustration that they say is building up between the Asian community and our community. And one of the reasons why, that they're able to do that is because, like, what did we talk about before? They make it seem like these people were mysterious. They're not mysterious. We already we showed you before how they have an intimate connection. We've already determined that they're related, because linguists say that languages are related genetically, and we already know that the Chinese language stems from the Indo-Iranian branch, and the Indo-Iranian branch comes from the Indo-European branch. We talked about these constructs, the Ural and the Caucasus Mountains. Those divides are just created by the so-called European, right? They know full well who these individuals are. We know that they leased Hong Kong for 99 years along with some other tributaries, and it's been a back and forth ever since, right? And then what a lot of people don't highlight or understand is that they have to now take a look at the Western Hemisphere and see what was going on there. As wars were being battled there was also a war going on right here at home. And see, what was that war? See, by the time, you had a mass, influx of Chinese immigrants, hundreds of thousands. They were settling over in California and in Hawaii. All right, so much so that by 1882, the United States like, enough of this shit. Now think about it. A country so-called fresh off of slavery, needing work, is saying that certain immigrants can't come here. Right? This was the first ethnic group to be the first specific, ethnic group or an ethnic group specifically picked out to, by the government, saying that you can't come here. All right, and that was the Chinese. In 1882. And then they limited them to like 105 people a year after that, all up until 1965. Now, why is that important? Because we know 1965 was the Civil Rights Act, right? And did you also know that Lyndon B. Johnson signed in the Immigration and Nationalization Act of 1965? Did you know that? It was influenced by the Civil Rights Act. The Naturalization Act, or the Immigration and Naturalization Act of 1965, allowed that quota to evaporate or disappear. Now Chinese can come in mass now. Ain't no more quota on them. So for the Chinese to sit up here and say our people racist, bitch, you better thank us for even being allowed to be in here in mass, because it was a bill that was influenced by us and our people doing all that marching and hip hooing or whatever the hell you want to call it. And we call it tap dancing because we should have been, paying attention to the energy inside of us that allowed us to truly liberate ourselves. But I digress. Fact of the matter is that even if we were to play into all of that political theater, it was by virtue of us that you're even allowed to be in this country in mass. And that's fact. We deal with facts, not feelings. You see what I'm saying? So this was the surface, because remember, they were talking about the excuse was they were competing with the Euro or the Blanco for their jobs and stuff like that. And that, that's why they created their laws. But that's the surface. Remember, we don't deal with nothing that's on the surface. We know that they are a vector species and they're uncontrollable in terms of their habits, their cultural habits. The European scene was out of control because one of the things that you have to understand, we already determined where the energy comes from with the Blanco. They all come from this moon energy, but like I said, it's variations of it. And you have to understand that it's a violent and chaotic energy. So you know how they appreciate the dog, but you know what the Chinese does with the dog. But yet if we bring this up, like they said, oh, they want to bring up the word nigga, but yeah, we bring y'all stuff up. When we bring up the, all the dirt and we bring up all the skeletons that's in their closet, oh, they want to shun it. And see, this is what's very interesting. When you bring these things up in their fact, because it's $1 billion industry, and this fact, this is the thing. Something must be wrong with it if they want to turn their back on it, if they don't want to own up to it. But yet, look at the documents. The documentation says that this is $1 billion industry. And we about to get into the receipts. We about to get into the receipts right now. We're not even about to play no games. And there's another thing. Somebody was telling me, some dude who wrote a comment in the comment section was like, yeah, man, you saying all that was nice, you putting your words together, but where are the receipts? Nigga, all I do is read from articles. The hell is you niggas talking about, man? I can keep telling you niggas, next time some of y'all come to class, make sure you take your helmet off. Now, look. When we're going to start reading this paragraph where, they're talking to the farmer, and he's talking about the effect that these new policies are having on him. So we're going to start reading because we got a lot of information to cover, right? He says, I don't understand this policy because I am a licensed and legal farmer. Remember, licensed. Wang, 38, who did not provide his first name for fear of repercussions, said, maybe it can somewhat reduce the public health crisis, but it doesn't mean it will prevent all virus outbreaks. This is how they don't care about the virus outbreaks. I need to be able to farm my rats. Okay, look. Wang ran a lucrative business in Gongji province breeding bamboo rats, a rodent used in cuisine in some parts of the country. Despite a government buyback program, he said he stands to lose at least 150,000 Chinese yuan, which is $21,000 in United States money, for more than 600 rats he was going to trade. I have so much debt now, I don't know what I will do in the future, he said. Halting the breeding of wildlife for the purpose of food won't resolve the issue entirely, experts warn. Now look how the Mayo start to explain for these individuals, right? Despite the breadth of the trade, the consumption of wild animals isn't as extensive as it would seem. Snakes are popular among some foodies like Ao, who said he can no longer find it in local restaurants. But the meat isn't carried nationwide and is a far cry from being as commonplace as hamburgers, being viewed as a special treat rather than a day-to-day order. Let Mayo explain. This man just talked about he in debt. Chinese is issuing out policies and buyback programs. This stuff is a big threat. Now, you see what the Mayo do? Look, this is why I tell you that they all have the same agenda. This is why I say that this is all hitting in place out. How do you know? Because think about this. Look how they always come to the defense. Even while they beefing with China, look, Walmart remain open. Even while they beefing with China, China scientists are coming up with a vaccine. Even though they was beefing with Russia. Russia a couple years ago, they said was meddling and interfering in their elections. Now, look at the Russian scientists and their Sputnik vaccine. Oh, they're great. Look at the job they're doing. Man, the United States shouldn't write no comic book. Y'all be the worst comic book. I mean, look, are they enemies or friends? Which one? You got me confused. Because they all have the same agenda. Remember how we talked about they brought in their new year, and the lunar year, lunacy, chaotic energy. Okay? So what you have to understand is that they're making excuses for them because, see, we already know. We're going to read an article that contradicts what the hell that European was trying to say. Look, it says, and this is from Chinese Dialogue, it's from Nature. It says, and it's entitled, Eating Habits in South China Driving Endangered Animals to Extinction. Let me say that again. This is the title. Eating habits in South China, driving endangered animals to extinction. Remember, I told you this is a sixth wave of extinction. And I told you that these beings are adept at chemical and biological warfare. They're vectors. They hold plagues and pathogens. And they feel like by consuming the organisms around them that they're taking in the energy. And we are solar beings. We take in energy from the sun. That's why I told you, a totally different science. Cantonese appetites are gobbling up endangered species, including the pangolin. I think a pangolin is like an anteater. giant salamander, wild snakes, and owls, facilitated by lax policing and a belief in medicinal benefits. Of course it's going to be lax policing, just like lax policing over here. When people believe in a certain way of life, what is these, like I said, all those avenues or mediums that are used in order to maintain the way that things are, will do it with force and fervor because they understand what their role is. Especially if they're in a position of power, in order to make it happen and maintain the status quo, they're going to do so. You're not going like, oh, they've been raised a certain way and have a belief system, and then you think that being a police officer is going to stop that, or being a doctor is going to stop that. No, that's only going to make them feel like they got more of a responsibility. With great power comes great responsibility, right? So let's continue to keep reading on, okay? So that you get an understanding. Now, before we read about the Cantonese, we want to read about, I'm gonna just read quickly what the Chinese measure was, and we're gonna get right into that. It says, as the consequences of the pandemic have reverberated through the globe, China has begun to change its tune. In February, this is February last year, China announced a complete ban on the wildlife trade for the purposes of human consumption, and that move triggered a wave of more specific regulations. China's Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Affairs declared in May that dogs were no longer livestock for consumption, just weeks before an annual dog meat festival in Yulin, a city in Guangxi province. See, when I talk about this energy when it's chaotic and it's out of control, we've already established who these Blancos' energy comes from, the dog, and how they revere the dog. You see what I'm saying? And then we've seen how they also treat the dog, obviously in a certain way, the vast majority of them. They was finna have a meat market. Okay? And what do you think? You think the brains and the spinal cord isn't consumed? Look. So we're going to go off into explaining, now, let's read about the Cantonese. The reputation the Cantonese have for eating wild animals is well deserved. The long-standing tradition is a part of the culture in Lingnan, the area covering Guangdong and surrounding provinces. An employee with the Wildlife Conservation Society's China office said that the Cantonese, and I quote, will eat anything, end quote. And the most sought after delicacies are endangered species. Among the most regularly eaten in Guangdong are the pangolin, like we talked about the anteater, the monitor lizard, the giant salamander, wild snakes, owls, and the yellow-breasted bunting. After preparation, an owl can be worth about 1,800 yuan. Pangolin sell for 500. Lizards for about 100. So, like I said, this is a billion-dollar business. Over years and years, this is what, like I said, when it's tied into the culture, there is no remedying the situation. It's inside. It's a cornerstone of the, of their livelihoods. Because this is the way that they feel that they maintain their life and their vigor. It's through absorbing the energy and the essence of these animals. But that's not us. We absorb the essence and the energy from the sun. Because we already know that vitamin D comes from the sun. It's called the sunshine vitamin. Vitamin D makes strong bones, and what is made in the bones? The blood. So we're the best at creating. They even tell you that our skeletal structure is 25 to 50% larger and stronger than our counterparts. So we don't have the same avenues of attaining enlightenment. So which means that we shouldn't have the same science to facilitate the attainment of enlightenment. Now, look what's so deep about this is that we're going to read that, like we said, we're going to see the connection. This is a cultural thing. And if they don't want you talking about what they do culturally, there's something wrong with that. This is what you do. Let's read. Medicinal power of wild animals. Wild. This is what you have to in feral. Wild. What do they do in the wild? They eat each other. Why would you want to consume something that eats other? The Chinese passion for eating wild animals is tied up with the belief that foods can have medicinal properties. Ancient medical writings ascribe such uses to almost all plants and animals, even animal organs, excrement, bodily fluids, and skin and feathers. Chinese medicine holds that medicine and food are of the same source. These views are still, medicine and food are of the same source. These views are still hugely influential, and even the virtually illiterate can name a number of prescriptions for various ailments. Spirits made with tiger penis, or sheep testicles for virility, or tiger bones for strong bones and muscles. And it is generally accepted that health is better maintained through diet than medicine. Look how they justifying this sick shit. And you thought that show with what's his name, Joe Rogan? What was that sick shit where they was eating testicles and all? This is what they do. You thought it was a contest? This is rituals. Many of these people, see, like we said before, man, you about to understand exactly who you around. You about to understand exactly who you're around because, like we said, what people don't realize, even when they were talking about the Spanish flu, and we're going to double back because remember we were talking about that and people got caught up in the name, and then remember we don't do surface level research here. So what you got to understand is that the Spanish flu or the influenza started off first in Kansas. That's where it was first recorded or documented. You know, that they accept, like universally accept, that it started in Kansas at Fort Riley. All right, with some soldiers. 500 got sick, and I think 48 end up dying. All right, and so that's why, and then the same thing is going on now. A lot of people who are conspiracy theorists state that this was something that was created in the lab, right? And do you also know that during that time that historians also say that the people back then blamed China for it coming from China? Did you know that? So this is the same shit. Remember we talked about around this time what? You had they was just coming off of a war, right? But then you had riots in all of these cities. Okay? You had marijuana legal, cocaine, heroin, all of that was, you can go down to your local pharmacist and get those things. All drugs were decriminalized. It was just a tax on it by 1914, the Harrison Narcotics Act. You see what I'm saying? Same thing going on. China was being blamed. Oh, you think that what? Look, we know individuals got the Oreo cookie syndrome, white in the middle, and black on the outside. So let's go ahead and we'll pull up the receipts, right? So we're going to show you the real reason. We're going to show you the real reason why they tried to keep a cap on these individuals. You see what I'm saying? Now this is from the National Geographic. It was published January 24th, 2014. If you want to go pick up this receipt. And it's headed 1918 flu pandemic that killed 50 million originated in China, historians say. Okay? And we're going to read some of this. All right? It says that historian Mark Humphreys of Canada's Memorial University of Newfoundland says that newly unearthed records confirm that one of the side stories of the war, the mobilization of 96,000 Chinese laborers to work behind the British and French lines on World War I's Western Front, may have been the source of the pandemic. It says, writing in the January issue of the journal War in History, Humphreys acknowledges that his hypothesis awaits confirmation by viral samples from flu victims. Such evidence would tie the disease origins to one location. But some other historians already find his argument convincing. This is about as close to a smoking gun as a historian is going to get, says historian James Higgins. Let's read. Okay. Okay, now this is what's important. This is what you have to pay attention to because I'm gonna highlight this. He says the 1918 flu was the last of the great plagues that struck humanity, and it followed in the tracks of a global conflict, says Humphreys. Even as the pandemic's origins have remained a mystery, the Chinese laborers have previously been suggested as a source of the disease. Historian Christopher Langford has shown that China suffered a lower mortality rate from the Spanish flu than other nations did, suggesting some immunity was at large in the population. See, isn't it the same thing? It started over there, then they wasn't affected. Everybody's like, they got over 1 billion people, but yet it goes everywhere else and it just bombs and it just explodes because they've been doing this for since their conception. And we know how the immune system works. We know how natural immunity works because once again, they're trying to impose upon you artificial technology and get it to artificially induce you to immunity. When we know that there's nothing, you cannot continue to keep reverse engineering nature's technology and thinking that what you then came up with is going to be able to substitute nature's technology. It's ridiculous. But yet, they show you right here in their articles, they develop natural immunity. That's why it didn't affect them. Because the vast majority of these individuals, even if they partake or not, we know that it's something called, quote unquote, heredity, their science, passing it along. So even though we know that they may not partake, the mother passes along her immunity. And they want to talk about it wears off all of this difference every 2 years. Nah. We know how immaculate the body is at learning. We're not going to buy that. We're not going to buy that because they gave us the same excuse about how it's passed along with cruel disease 10 to 40 years later. Okay? So that came from the female's immune system. You can't have it both ways. You can't have it both ways. You see, when it's convenient for him to get away with something, then, oh no, the mother's immune system, it disappears after 2 years of age and the baby starts developing its own immune system. You see what I'm saying? So we got to get rid of that. See, this is what I'm telling you, that they blame the Chinaman for this disease even back then. A vector species, and you see what happened because, like we said before, they didn't catch it, or they may not be catching it if, you buying into that narrative, is because they have developed immunity from it because they specialize in eating wild animals. It's in the culture. It's in the culture. And remember, like we talked about before, and you go back to that's one of the reasons why they wanted to keep a halt on the population. We talked about this, and we're just going to go over it again because you have to reiterate this. This is important. Commit these things to memory. Because it was the United States that excluded them in 1882, the Chinese Exclusion Act, right? We said this before, but let's go over it again. So the Chinese Exclusion Act excluded them, and then they weren't able to come back in mass until 1965. And why is that important? Because 1965 was the Civil Rights Act that we marched and fought for, right? But then they piggybacked it off, and Lyndon B. Johnson signed in 1965 what? The Immigration and Naturalization Act, which allowed these Chinese, the so-called Chinaman, to come back in mass again because he was being limited. They knew exactly what was going on because they felt like they were the cause of this disease in 1918. From their habits, their cultural practices, because it's wild animals. And with wild animals, most wild animals that they're talking about, they're talking about certain birds and things but a lot of birds, like we said, that they're talking about, like these bats and things like that, like we said, these are vector species. We know the rats are too as well. We've already read those articles. You see what I'm saying? So these are the things that are important, man. And you have to understand that this is why these things are hidden. And then let's go to another article where we'll read this because we're going to Kansapedia. This is Kansas Historical Society. So this is from Kansas Historical Society, and it's entitled Flu Epidemic of 1918. Let's just read a little bit, right? Let's go. In 1918, the United States was involved in World War I, but was also dealing with the outbreak of a deadly influenza epidemic. The first cases of the outbreak were recorded in Haskell County, Kansas, and Fort Riley, Kansas, where young men were being hospitalized for severe flu-like symptoms. A local doctor sent a report to the Public Health Service, but no one was sent to investigate the situation. On March 4th, 1918, an outbreak appeared at Fort Riley with as many as 500 soldiers hospitalized within a week. Within a month, however, the number of patients dwindled and it seemed that the flu had passed its course. Many of these soldiers were sent to Europe to help fight in World War I. While in Europe, the disease mutated and became deadly. By many reports of soldiers falling ill were reaching the U.S., it did not take long for the disease to spread from the soldiers to the civilian population of Europe and then around the world. Few areas remained unaffected, and there were recorded outbreaks in Asia, Africa, Europe, North and South America, as well as the Arctic and remote Pacific islands. This is what you see. This is what a lot of people, and then like I said, the outbreak of 1918 was named the Spanish influenza, although inaccurate. Historians believe this name came from the lack of media signal in Spain when the disease hit. And so, like we said, it started off in the United States and France and the United Kingdom, and then it just got its name from Spain. But then they also beat back and forth, and then, you know, individuals will say, yeah, it was made by the government, and then the government is saying that, yeah, the Chinese that spread it. But we do know one thing: we understand that we know the nature of these individuals. We know how individuals have got their roots that come from you know, bestiality and violent origins and chaotic energy, right? And then we know that you know, variations of that can only lead to more unstable energy, right, in the form of all these other beings that inhabit this realm, and then they all participate in this ritual. And as we've seen that with them bringing in the lunar year, you know, to help bring in that energy that will aid in destroying the people who contain the godlike molecule that we call melanin. Now, this is the thing. You know, they, like I said before, they're going to defend them because everybody has the same agenda. They agree. They all have the same science. They all have the same science. You see what I'm saying? And we are the only people on the planet that disagree vehemently with the Euro Blanco pseudoscience. You know what I'm saying? We disagree vehemently with it. And everybody else agrees. Everybody else sucks all that shit up, and we can't do that. Now, this is the thing that I'm going to show you. We're going to play a video right quick. And because we're going to show you how it goes. And then how they act like they can't do anything about it. And this is 1976 Copyright Act, Section 107, purposes of commentary, criticism, education, news reporting, scholarship, and, you know, here at the FOF Squad overall for just waking your ass up, you know. But we know how these individuals are, man, you know, their practices and stuff like that. And they're allowed to get away with it simply because, you know, they're the same stock.
Restaurant appears to still have a roach issue despite being allowed to reopen.
Plus, another restaurant owner says don't blame her for all the violations found in her kitchen. Here's local 10 investigator Jeff Weintz here with tonight's Dirty Dining Report.
Look at all the roaches on the floor.
Even after they were re-inspected and allowed to reopen, the roach issues still exist inside Lucky Star Chinese. It is in Hollywood.
There's roaches all over the floor here.
No, go outside. Can you go outside?
There's roaches everywhere.
I know, go outside.
You know? You're not supposed to be open then. What happened here?
I'm not open.
You are open. You opened yesterday.
No.
Lucky Star located at 5301 Short
I can't
Street.
do it. I can't do it. You know what I'm saying? There, we're playing. Get out. You know, and we're still allowed to say open. You know, they not even, man, they shutting down our family reunions, let alone if we, look, I'm telling y'all got to understand who y'all dealing with. You see what I'm saying? They've been aware. They've had an intimate relationship with these beings who are also a vector species, and they all are participating in the ritual. You know, we got to get away from this idea like they don't know each other, like they these battling powers and stuff like that. They in different ways try to keep each other in check because they know that they have to do a lot in order to contain that energy. You see it even with these Blancos, man. They want to act like they're not a violent species, but they have to have all these things in play in order to curb that violence. They got to go hunting. They got to kill. They got to have a ton of horror movies with blood and gore. Something has to, you know, satisfy that violent urge. That rabies, because it's something that you've been fed for a long time. This is, like I said, this is why they can guarantee that in 50, 60 years, the vast majority of Americans are going to suffer from some form of dementia, because you've been taking it in this whole time. Like people talked about the conspiracy theorists with the babies and the vaccinations and you know, in the meat and the things that we consume has all been tainted since our conception. That's what I'm telling you, is that you have to stay on point. You have to stay on guard. These people that they're pitching to you as enemies and stuff like that, that's the furthest thing from the truth. They're all in on it because they understand exactly what you are. And your energy source is totally different from their energy source, and you must understand that. I hope all this is getting across. We'll break more of it down. But this is the FOS squad, and we don't play no games. Let's get it.